Hello, and welcome to a very well lit episode of Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about about Yooka-Laylee for the Nintendo Switch. I know, you're probably thinking, Sam, why didn't you wear the Banjo-Kazooie shirt? I know you have it, because I saw it in a video or whatever. In the wash, and I wanted to finish the review today. And this shirt's just as good. It's just as fitting. It's fine. I have a hat. I have a this little fella guy. So don't fucking judge me, dude. Just leave me the fuck alone with your shit and your fuck. I just want to talk about Yooka-Laylee because I finally got around to playing it and actually finishing it. And I think after being such a huge outspoken fan of Banjo-Kazooie and being a fan of stuff like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie and Grunty's Revenge, and I've already done Donkey Kong 64 and Conker's Bad Fur Day. This is a genre, and the people behind this doing it, because it's made by ex-Rare employees here at Platonic Games. It says on the front, that's weird. It's just, I don't know. I figured it was probably a good idea for me to talk about this, especially since I finally got my hands on it after the whole fucking ordeal of, hey, this sounds like a really cool idea. I'm finally getting excited for this thing. And then I finally get a Wii U. Late in the game, I get a Wii U. And it's like, well, it's going to have this. And it's going to have some other cool stuff on it. Mostly I wanted Mario Maker on there. Let's not talk about what happened with that. But this then was canceled afterwards. And it was put onto everything else but the Wii U at the time. And so I couldn't play it. But now, even though I did get it on PC, it doesn't really run that well on there. And I was going to try to muddle through it as best I could on my laptop. But then I got a Switch, and it's like, well, this will work better on the Switch. And so I did it there. And here we are. But keep that in mind, I guess, is that I am coming from the perspective of someone who is a big fan of the games this is, pulling nostalgia from. So, my review might reflect some of that. Maybe have the exposure too high. It seems like it's almost too bright. No, it doesn't. I mean, it's a very bright and colorful case and all. I didn't spring for the super crazy Nintendo 64 box-looking case, because as far as I know, it is, just sideways. And I guess it's a slightly different looking case a little bit, I think. But, this is fine. Have it physical and like this. I don't think I needed to go spending, a shit ton for this. So I didn't. And you can check out the written review. That'll be linked in the description. You can do that whenever the fuck you want, or just not, if you don't want. And that's a new way of saying that. So, hey, progress. So, the main setup premise in Yooka-Laylee is that the lizard Yooka and the bat Laylee are this couple of friends who are hanging out, and their house is like a shipwreck. I don't know if the ship wrecked there, if that was their ship, or if it's someone else's ship or whatever. I think it's someone else's ship. Doesn't really matter. Not really the point. They live there. Laylee finds the book. This book that she believes, this will lead to some kind of treasure, but then finds out, hey, all the pages in here are made of gold. Sweet. Well, we can sell this book for a bunch of money. And then all of a sudden the book gets taken away mystically. It turns out it was taken away because it's sucked away with all of the other books in the world by this machine made by this evil corporate overlord called Capital B, who was a giant bee. Essentially his plot is more or less, they're going to absorb all of the books in the entire world, and then they'll have a monopoly on the market, and they'll be able to sell all of these books and there's not going to be any more competition. And that's, that's mainly their plot. And so on its way to that machine, this book loses a bunch of its pages. Since you kind of need those in the book, and those are valuable because they're made of gold and whatever, Yooka and Laylee are going to go on a quest to get all those pages back, reassemble the book, and that's mostly what they're doing, is trying to reassemble this book. I believe it's also shortly into the game you'll find out that this is actually this mystical one book, which actually has the ability for whoever has it to actually rewrite the universe, essentially. And so that's kind of also another part of why Capital B is hoping to maybe get this book in the process, and that's also part of why they want to get it back. Then again, this has been months since I first played, so maybe that wasn't revealed until later, but I think it was. Even so, either way, it's not really a big deal, because that's something that doesn't really, get utilized at this point, I don't think. So, it's not really a spoiler, really. In the first little area, you start off in, it's kind of like a little tutorial area to teach you about things. It's, you kind of go through, you find out this is the thing, like, you get a little tutorial section, you go in and you finally get into the hub world, and then you go into your first world, and like, this hub world is basically just the layer of Capital B. It's called Ivory Towers. And, like, in the little section before you get there, you first have to collect a few of these golden quills that are scattered around the place, and then you have to give them to Trouser the Snake, who, it's basically teaching you that you can give Trouser the Snake quills in order to learn new moves. When you need those new moves to further traverse through the worlds, and even just to traverse through the hub in order to get to these different worlds. Then once you get into Ivory Towers, you get your first golden page, and these are called pages. And you need to use those in order to open up grand tomes, which are essentially just the entrances to the worlds of the game. So you have to bring the appropriate amount of pages to the grand tome, and then put them in, and then you can enter the world. In each of the worlds, the main goals are things like collecting quills and pages. You need to collect these quills that are scattered all over the level, these big open, playground, sandboxy style levels. And you're collecting those quills that are kind of just placed into different places for, like, here, like, it's just to kind of catch your interest, to be like, there's stuff over here, and some of them are a little more tucked away and hidden for, like, hey, you found this little spot. You get those quills, and you, again, are used to talk to Trouser the Snake, and you learn different abilities, which will help you out generally throughout the level. You also get an ability for free between the levels in Ivory Towers itself after beating levels, so there's that. And then you get pages by doing just certain little challenges or mini games or quests within the levels. Some of them are for just like little puzzles. Some of them are characters will just ask for favors, and in return you'll get a pagey. Every world has 5 ghost riders to find that are kind of like Jinjos from Banjo-Kazooie, where essentially you just find them in the different parts of the level. And each of them also takes something different to, like, capture them. Like, there's like one where you can just, like, touch it. There's another where you have to catch it. There's one that's kind of hidden. You have to uncover it and then get it while it's visible. There's one you have to feed and then capture. There's one you have to beat up to capture. So there's a lot of different, like, little things you have to do for each one. So that's trying to add up some spice to the Jinjos. And then there's also usually, like, these little, each world has a minecart level to do. You get a pagey for doing that. They're essentially supposed to be throwback to, like, Donkey Kong Country's minecart kind of stages, and it's just to collect so many gems and keep that many by the end of the level. And if you do that, then you get the pagey. There's a play coin to collect in each level, and you can give that to Rextro, this polygonal dinosaur that's supposed to be kind of a joke on old style games, like arcadey games. He lets you basically play an arcade style game then in that world, and you can usually get 2 pages for it, one for beating the game and then another for beating Rextro's high score. There's also a boss in each world, so you usually get a pagey for beating the boss in each world, and then there's also a thing you can collect called a molecule, which is this little molecule-looking thing you give to a character called Dr. Puzz, who has a machine that is powered by those and can transform you into something different on each world. So usually there's at least one pagey to get from that transformation as well. But of course those are just stuck to those worlds, so you turn into whatever, and it's only for that world, and you can change back whenever during the world. Also hidden in the world, there are usually at least one health extender and one energy extender. The health extender is like a butterfly. Your health is represented by butterflies. If you eat butterflies in the game, then you get your health back. That's how you regain health. But if you just walk through them and collect them, and you get the butterflies, it'll refill your energy. And your energy is like, that's like kind of a representation of that extender. It's like a little like battery looking thing. The energy is just used for certain special moves. You'll use up different amounts of your energy, and it will also just replenish all of it after a certain period of time. But you get a butterfly that replenishes a chunk of it immediately. And the only other thing really to get, I believe, then in each world is there are these super secret pirate treasures. Each world has one hidden somewhere, and essentially you just have to go and you can find it. It's only really, as far as I know, it only does anything for like these little achievements that are, you can find it through the main menu, and I guess there's probably something else on Steam for it or something. Other places might have trophies or something, but as far as on the Switch version and just in the game itself, whatever, there's a little achievement menu, and you'll unlock a little like still shot for doing those. Is the only way to really track it. So they're kind of akin to the stop and swap items of Banjo-Kazooie, where it's kind of like, it's a neat little extra bonus thing to get, but it doesn't really do anything. I find it kind of similar to that. Then afterwards, once you are done with the level, you can leave the level, and then every level can actually be expanded once, which takes more pages. So you kind of have that option to, you do you want to go to the next level, or do you want to expand an existing one already? And when you expand it, then the level just gets bigger. There's more stuff to do. Usually it'll add things, more missions. So there's more pages to get. You can get the rest of the quills and ghost riders and other things, more missions to do. So that's how they get more. There's 200 quills in every level to collect, and 25 pages in every level. So you have to expand the levels in order to get all of the things in them, and to get all the collectibles in the game. In order to actually beat the game, just to attempt to do the final battle and everything, you have to have certain moves in order to get there. So it takes however many quills to do that, and you need 100 pages in order to access that final fight. And that's, that is more or less the game, is to do those things. And I liked a lot of that. It was a good time. It's very colorful, and it's got with the colorful visuals and the open playground style level design, running around and kind of exploring and finding stuff, while also doing some other little challenges and things here and there. That was a good mix of having some fun and exploring, with also having some actual challenging stuff. So you're never too bored of just I'm just running around grabbing shit. But you're also never I'm just getting annoyed by all these challenges. It's not just here's challenge after challenge. So it was a good mix, I think, especially for this kind of game. Lots of charming characters. They definitely feel like characters you'd expect from a Banjo-Kazooie-esque game, which is good. You want that. There's even some lines here. I'm not usually one to find the written dialogue stuff all that funny in a lot of games, but even some of these things made me chuckle. So that was pretty good. That was a little more than I expected for some of these. So good amount of personality and just goofiness to these characters, these NPCs and everything. There's also a soundtrack, and I guess there maybe other people on there I haven't looked closely. I know Grant Kirkhope was a big part of the soundtrack, though, and it shows, because, again, the way this game kind of looks and feels and sounds, presents itself, it's basically, the best Banjo 3 you're going to get without illegally being Banjo 3 and, you know, not getting sued for what have you. And so, like, a lot of that pulling on that nostalgia is nice. It works. And there's an interesting amount of variety. The idea of expanding worlds is neat. You know, overall, yeah, for a lot of the factors going into this game were very positive and neat. It was also interesting just to see, you know, how they did try to make, like, these two different characters here who are obviously trying to do a lot of things that are similar to Banjo and Kazooie, but also because they're a lizard and a bat, there's things where they have to kind of alter some of the stuff, so it's not exactly the same anyways, and also some things they did that are new, where, you know, there's things that are kind of similar, you know, like you kind of roll, this rolling thing where, like, Yooka rolls into a ball and, like, Laylee's just, like, running on him to, like, go up slopes that are too steep to walk up. That's an interesting, like, take on, like, the Talon Trot, where he's just, like, walking on Kazooie's legs to go up steep slopes. That's kind of neat. But there's other stuff where it's, like, they kind of try to take more of the actual stuff of these characters and make them different, like that sonar ability that Lilly shoots out to, like, uncover secrets and stun enemies, or the ability to cloak yourself, like, you know, like, kind of like a chameleonic thing, you know, like a lizard might be able to do with Yooka. Like, those are, like, cool little things they threw in there that didn't feel like they were just like, hey, how do we make Banjo-Kazooie but not be Banjo-Kazooie so we don't get sued? And so I like that. I think that was good. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the game, I suppose, is what I'm getting at. And a lot of it, I guess, feels like what what Banjo. Basically, if there was a Banjo 3 on the GameCube, but wasn't technically Banjo 3 because of licensing reasons, this feels like what it would be like, and that's also kind of some of the problem. You know, there's a lot of stuff here where, yeah, it's nice to say, like, oh, it's like Banjo-Kazooie, or it's like, Donkey Kong Country. But we also can see shades of Conker's Bad Fur Day in a bad way, in the sense of, like, they were doing a lot of ambitious things here, that there were, like, a lot of variety in different things, different mechanics they were throwing in, but they weren't fully fleshed out. There's a lot of stuff that feels really sloppy and wonky, and for, like, most of the mini games, most of the transformations, and even some of, like, the techniques you learn, it just feels really loose and sloppy, and it's hard to really master the weirdness of them. And for some of them, even once you do, it still feels kind of glitchy and wonky, and like it doesn't always work properly. And that's a problem when, you need to do you need to complete challenges with them, and that's because most of the things you're trying to do look simple enough, they seem simple enough, but they're actually pretty goddamn hard because they just don't work very well. And that's that's a thing where I feel like they should have maybe taken some extra time and really polished those up, and really made sure the mechanics were nice and tight, and that challenge was coming from something difficult rather than just poor control. Also, the world design is kind of reminiscent of my issues with Banjo-Tooie, where the worlds are really big, but there's not enough stuff in them. Yes, now the quills there's 200 in the levels instead of like 100 notes, and they're all separated again, but the levels are so much bigger, especially when you consider you can expand them, that and the fact that there's also not other collectibles in between them. There's really only, the few staple collectibles you can get per level, the 200 quills, and then I guess, pages and ghost riders. Maybe there's some level specific things here and there, sometimes maybe. And it just feels like there's still a lot of dead spaces, a lot of places where I actually went adventuring, and it was kind of cool just kind of exploring around the different parts of the world's architecture that I don't even know if they even thought about you going there. But the problem is they didn't think about you going there, so there's nothing for you to get there. I think there's even one, I believe it was in Glitter Glaze Glacier, where like I went like underwater and like kind of down and up into like this cave thing, this little like pocket of water inside of a wall. And there was nothing in there. There maybe should have been something in there, but it almost seems like that just kind of showed up because of how they designed it, and they didn't really playtest to find that spot, or something. It just like felt like there should have been something there, and there wasn't. So that was frustrating for some of that stuff to be like, I felt like sometimes my exploration wasn't being rewarded, or every once in a while you need to explore really heavily like that to find a few off the beaten path things if you want to get 100%, which can also be frustrating to, mash those two ideas together. Like, why isn't there more stuff to find everywhere then? And this also goes into the problem of, there are only 5 worlds in this game. And I feel like there probably should have been 10 worlds, each one being more compact, so there's, reason to go everywhere in the level, utilizing the space well, and then you would also have, at this point, I guess you'd probably have another 5 worlds that would have different themes to them, and you do different settings, do different fun stuff with them. But instead, we've got 5 worlds that already feel kind of too big, that you can then expand to be even bigger, and it's kind of just more of the same because you're expanding the same world. Interesting concept on paper, doesn't really go as well in practice. Kind of kicking myself that I didn't think of saying it was well on pagey like I did in the written review, but if you saw it before this, then if you already looked at that, you know that I did that. And if you didn't, well, I've spoiled it. Unless you're not going to look at the written review, in which case you're welcome. Sort of. I still didn't do it well, but at least I thought of it, right? Anyways, there's just a lot of sloppiness here, and it's just a shame because there's a lot of charm here. There's clearly a lot of heart put into this game, but the level of polish doesn't go along with it. And things like, I can forgive weird cameras, and I can forgive some kind of wonky hitboxes and stuff going on. I can forgive that. But when you have all these different ideas for gameplay mechanics and they don't work very well, to the point where they're frustrating to bother with, granted you don't need to do those things, but as a collect-a-thon you probably want to. A lot of people would want to. It's just hard to really let some of that stuff go. As well as the fact that, you don't really get much for completing it either. And I guess that's fine, but it would have been nice to get a little something more than, unceremonious stills that I had to go and find or unlock later, rather than even just a little thing and be like, hey, you got this, I don't know. So Yooka-Laylee is kind of what you might expect. If you wanted to see what a Banjo 3 would be like on the GameCube, this is kind of what it would be like. It doesn't do a great job of modernizing the concept of the 3D platformer collect-a-thon. It tries to pull back to these old things a lot, and I think that maybe the developers haven't really evolved enough to make a modern game like this work. And the reason I say that also is because I've played this in the wake of playing Super Mario Odyssey, which I thought was a fantastic modern 3D platformer collect-a-thon. And, this doesn't do that. This is released in the modern age. It looks pretty, but it's just, design-wise, it feels like the mentality is too old, that the polish isn't there, and that it feels like, again, I feel like where they would have been had this been something released in the GameCube era. It would have been about like this. And, I guess what that boils down to for my recommendations is, if you're a fan of Banjo-Kazooie, this isn't as good as that, or Banjo-Tooie, or even Grunty's Revenge. But if you're still, on that bear and bird high, you're still coasting on those fumes, this is a good one to play. Because you'll get more of that out of it, and still keep going on that. This just probably isn't going to be the first thing you go to. For the most part, though, I would say that, in general, I guess, if you want to have a really good, modern 3D platformer collect-a-thon, get Super Mario Odyssey. And if you want a classic, 3D platformer collect-a-thon, play Banjo-Kazooie. This is really somewhere that falls in the middle that I can't recommend to most people. In fact, a friend of mine asked me after I beat this game. They asked if they thought I enjoyed this more or less because of how much I love Banjo-Kazooie, which is my favorite game of all time. And the answer was actually both. I like this game, I guess. I ended up enjoying it more than maybe I should have because it was pulling out all those things I remember from Banjo-Kazooie, all those things I already liked there. Plus, it's also, in general, it's kind of hard to say because Banjo-Kazooie was such an important game for, solidifying the 3D platformer collect-a-thon, genre. This is a very specific genre to me that I love so much. And also, it helped me think about why I liked it so much and helped me basically form a lot of my opinions on thinking about games and reviewing games, and it helped form all of this. So it's kind of hard to think about any game and pretend like Banjo-Kazooie didn't have some hand in me, my enjoyment of it in that sense, anyways. But on the other hand, it also destroyed some of my expectations because I wanted something as good as Banjo-Kazooie. And I was even kind of hoping for something, like that was, I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be as good as that. I wasn't going to like it as much as that, at least. But I thought it would be pretty good. And it's a lot sloppier than I was expecting, and so it still was kind of a letdown. But I guess the thing is that at least I know. I've had the opportunity to play it and see for myself and know for myself and form these opinions. And I think that that's something that's important to remember also, is that, you can play any number of games and be like, oh man, what a waste of time. But it's really only wasting your time if you don't get anything out of it. And this game is, and as like with most games I play, it helps me keep my critical mind thinking. It helps me keep my perspective current and active on how I feel about video games, what I think about video games. And, that's something that, even if this game is something I end up never playing again, which I probably will, but even if that were the case, it wasn't a waste of time because of what it added to my experiences, to my life. And that's something that's, that's worth more than nothing, okay? That's what I'm getting at. And I should probably now thumb through this booklet that I beat the game, because I bet it's got some cool stuff in here. And it might tell me stuff I maybe should have known before I played the game. But I didn't open it up yet. But it's cool that it has a booklet. See you guys. I'm not going to do the sequel. I'll just put that out there. I'm not doing the sequel. It looks like they're going to basically redo, their version of Donkey Kong Country, which was already done with Donkey Kong Country Returns. And I like that. I don't really need to see Yooka-Laylee do it. So I'm not gonna go out of my way to get it anyways. I might get it. I'm just not gonna go out of my way to get it. So sorry about the shirt.
Oh, ha ha ha.